Hello my faithful viewers. Today we are going to be going over the foosball problem from the Kattis website. And I'm going to try out a little bit of a different format in this video. Instead of typing out the solution as I'm recording, I'm going to instead finish the solution, submit it, and then talk about how I solved the problem. As usual, the disclaimer: I would not recommend coding in this style for any sort of environment where other people are going to be reading your code, as I use almost no comments and not very explicit variable names. Anyway, let's jump right in. So the overall idea for how I solved this problem was as a simulation. So I simulated the exact situation outlined on the problem description. So in order to do that, I made a function stepGame, which effectively takes a winning team, losing team, and the line of players, and updates the winning team and losing team corresponding to the description on the problem description. Right. So then the bulk of the code is in the main function. So I started with this iOS sync with standard IO, and this just makes the reading and writing a little bit faster. You can read about it on the Kattis website in the C++ section if you're curious about why I did that. Okay, so first off, I read in the number of players total, and then I used pairs for my white and black teams. Pair is a built-in structure in C++, and it has a first and a second item. And I just made them strings for the players' names, and the way that I did the format was the white team.first is the white team's offensive player, and white team.second is the white team's defensive player, and same with the black team. So then I initialized a queue for my line. Queue is just the best structure to use for this, since the line is clearly first in, first out. Okay, so then I just read in all my input, so that's down to here. So then I needed to initialize a variable to take my input. Now this will be the team that wins the game. So it'll be either W or B. The next one, previous input, this is just so I can compare the previous input with the current input and make sure that they are, if they're the same, then I'm incrementing the current dynasty. Otherwise, I'm creating a new dynasty. So then I have a current dynasty. Now this will be the dynasty that is currently at the table and that's currently winning. So then I have a current dynasty length and a max dynasty length. The max dynasty length I initialized to 0, since starting out, any team that gets any number of wins is the longest dynasty so far. And then I have a queue for max dynasties. This is because there could be multiple max dynasties at the same time. And then I have a current dynasty is sol max. So this is just so I don't have to check if I need to destroy the queue and put only that one team in it. It helps me make the code a little bit more efficient down here, and I'll show you that when I get to it. So first off, I need to just make sure that, so I'm reading through while cn.get input. So this just loops until you get to the end of file indicator. So if it's not W and B, well, I just need to continue. Effectively, sometimes you'll read new lines or something, and for that you just need to disregard the input and just read another input, because I'm only looking for W's and B's. So if the input is equal to the previous input, well, that means I'm just incrementing my current dynasty length, because that means that it's the same team that won the last time. Well, if it's not, if my input is not equal to my previous input, then that means that I need to create a new dynasty. So I make the current dynasty length equal to 1. If my input was a W, then I need to make the current dynasty the white team Now, the reason I have this conditional in here, this whole thing, is because the problem specifies that you need to output the dynasties in the order at which they got to the table. Now, if it is the first read, if they're the first dynasty, or rather if they're the first team to be at the table, so as in previous input is 0, since I initialized it to 0, right here, then that means that the current dynasty is just equal to the team. But otherwise, since the person who gets to the table first, if you've been pushed off the table by the line, is the person who is in the defensive position, not the offensive position, then I need to swap the white team second and white team first when I create the current dynasty. This was easy to see whenever I just ran the first test case on the Kattis website. It showed me instantly what the problem was there. So I do the same thing if the input was a W, so here's the else here for that. It's effectively the same code as up here, except I'm replacing all the white team with black team. I should, for obvious reasons, reformat this code if I were doing this in any sort of environment where I'm looking for readability, because repeating code like this is not something that you want to do. You would like to have no code repetition at all. And this structure is obviously mimicked. Okay, so if my current dynasty, if I just created a new dynasty because I got to this else here, then that means that I need to put my current dynasty as sol max equal to false. That just makes it false again if it was true. Now, granted, it probably would have been false already since I initialized it to false, but if it wasn't, then I need to just set it back to false. Now, if my current dynasty is the sol max, well, that means it's already the max dynasty, right? And that also means that I took this if branch and not this else, right? Because it's set to false at the end of this else. So then I can just increment the max dynasty length. And so that means the current dynasty length will actually be equal to the max dynasty length, because the current dynasty is the sol max dynasty. Now, otherwise, if my current dynasty length is equal to my max dynasty length, then I just want to put the current dynasty on the max dynasties. Otherwise, if my current dynasty length is greater than my max dynasty length, then I need to destroy the max dynasties, since the ones that are currently in the max dynasties are not long enough. So I destroy that, make it a empty queue. This is just using the simple queue constructor with the empty parameters. So then I push on the current dynasty onto the max dynasties, and I set the current dynasty as sol max to true, because this current dynasty is the only dynasty on the max dynasties. Then I set the max dynasty length equal to the current dynasty length. Alright. So, next, if the input was... Next I need to just step the game, so I need to progress. So if the input... Progress the simulation. So if the input was W, then that means my winning team... I'm going to go back up to the signature here so you can see that. So winning team was the first parameter of step game, and then losing team's the second. So that means if the input was W, so the white team won, then that means it needs to go first here. Ooh. Let me just undo that. There we go. Now, otherwise, so it was black who won, not white. Then I need to put black team first, and then white team, and then the line. So then at the very end of this loop, I set the previous input equal to the input. Okay, so then this while loop at the bottom here is just a simple way to print all of my elements off the queue. So while the max dynasties is not empty, I just want to print out the first element, a space, the second element, and then an inline. Then I just need to pop off the top element of max dynasties, the front element. So I hope that you guys could understand the solution. I would recommend that you just work through the solution yourself. Just take a day to take a break from hearing my solution and looking at the code of my solution, and then code it up yourself, because I realize that this main function is very long, and granted, if I was coding for readability, I would obviously have broken this down into smaller functions, but considering that it's a competitive programming problem, I'm really just coding for speed, and I'm just trying to get down a solution that works. I'm not trying to make it super readable or anything. So because of that, I imagine a lot of you guys are going to have trouble sort of deciphering what I did here, and that's all right. That's why I would recommend just kind of doing it yourself. I mean, the best way to learn to code is to do it yourself. So if you have any, as usual, I will put links in the description for every function, every object I used, every library. And if you all, have any questions or comments, concerns, or suggestions, just, leave them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, friends.